So Trina, this is the message. All right. This feels a little... All right, here we go. And I will be doing a meditation before this recording also. So I'm going to be making reference to, well, we just did meditation, so that won't throw you off too much, will it? All right. So taking the high road. So this week, the conversation is about taking the high road. And I don't know how many of you saw the newsletter, but what it said was, take the high road or at least set your GPS with that intention.
Right.
Because I don't know about you, but that high road does not always seem like the easiest exit to me. There's a lot of other choices on that freeway that I'm running down. And what I notice is that there are many definitions to this phrase, the high road. This actually became a popular statement in the year of a political election between Dewey and Truman, right? And actually, Mr. Dewey is the one that said, okay, I'm going to take the high road, because I guess there was a lot of mudslinging. They just had no idea what that could possibly be, did they? We have advanced well in that department. So, but there's also the definition that taking the high road is to behave in a moral way when other people are just not behaving that way. The British like to call taking the high road meaning to take the main or most direct route, literally or figuratively. I'm just curious. So where's your GPS set? Because what I know about GPS is it always gives me options, right? I can take, the freeway. I can take a primary, secondary road. I can take the four-wheel drive path. I get to make those choices about the road that I'm going to take. So when we start talking about taking the high road, I'm just curious. What is your default on that? Now, if you're like most of us humans, our initial response to most things that are sandpaper to our soul, like I like to say, is to react. That's just a very human way of being, is to just react. And sometimes that's just the best way to be. Sometimes that's exactly what the situation calls for. I found several quotes about taking the high road, and I will tell you I couldn't find authors to any of them, so I don't know if people weren't wanting to claim it or if we just didn't have the right research. But what we know about conflict is this, and the high road is the invitation that comes with conflict, of course. What we know about conflict is this, that conflict cannot survive when only one person participates. It can't survive. Now, that may sound like not taking a stand. That may sound like giving up. Or it could be surrender. It could be surrender into, I'm choosing peace in this moment instead. It could be the option of saying, I choose to be happy rather than right in this given moment. But conflict cannot survive when only one person participates. Now, my mom used to say, talking louder does not make you more correct. I think that applies to taking the high road. Talking louder doesn't make you correct. Nothing gives a person more of an advantage over another as to remain cool and unruffled in all circumstances. That one was attributed to Thomas Jefferson, but I had a hard time thinking that he would use the word cool, so I wasn't quite sure about that. When you take the high road, you always have the strategic advantage. My mother used to say, because you can kick rocks off of it and hit the people down below. Not my practice, but there is a strategic advantage to taking the high road. And when you take the high road, what we find to be true is that people will either rise up to join you or they will fall out of sight. When you take the high road, the view is much better. So I have a question for you. How do you know when you're on the low road? Because my perception might be that I am on the high road. But if I took one little step back, I might fall off of it. And if I took one little step back, I might also realize, well, maybe that's not quite as high of a road as I thought it was. Now, I didn't ask you how you know how the other guy is on the low road. I'm asking you how you know you're on the low road. You know what the low road is. That's not really any new information. It's when you're stressed and you're exhausted and you're resentful and you're angry and you're upset and you feel attacked. When you insist on being right and you are absolutely going to wring an apology out of that person, out of your opponent. When your fuse is so short that you truly feel justified in having your own little temper tantrum. That's the low road. When you're in the grip of fight or flight emotions and the other person or situation looks like the enemy, you can bet you're on the low road. Because what we teach is that we are one with God. And that is not limited to the people in this room, to the people that are watching. That is all. Now take a breath. Now take a breath. Because in today's world, I am seeing more and more the struggle to absolutely embrace the all of that concept. Now maybe that's just my personal experience, but I don't think I'm the only one that's having that struggle. When the other person or situation looks like an enemy, you're headed for the low road if you're not already on it. Ask yourself, where do you feel the love in that moment? Where is love in that moment? Where in your thoughts, where in the environment, where in your body do you feel love in that moment? It's tough to find, isn't it? How do you know when you're on high ground? I want you to rest for a moment into that question. We know what it feels like to be on the low road. I can feel the energy in the room settle into. I know what the low road looks like. I know how I behave when I'm on the low road. It is not a pretty sight. And it's not pretty on any of us. So now I want you to rest into this moment of considering, how do you know when you're on high ground? When you're taking the high road, what is your standard of measure? Where is your GPS set when you're taking the high road? What are you using to gauge? Because my experience right now in today's world is, if I use the standards of measure that I see around me, it's just not a very high road. It just doesn't take very much to step up and step out of some of what we are experiencing in today's world. And I'm not just talking about politics. I'm talking about how in this 6 months of isolation, people's consciousness has shifted. There are greater levels of awareness about things that we weren't even thinking about before. We're starting to take the high road on those thoughts. We're starting to step into a higher consciousness around things that had really kind of not been in the forefront of our minds. How do you know you're on the high road? So I had the coolest experience today. I'm in the office and I'm working away and my lights start flickering and I think that can only be Michael. And sure enough, it was Michael at the bottom of the steps, and I hear him coming up the steps. And he comes in, he sits down, we're talking about a little project, because I've always got a little project to do. And we start talking, and we're doing our thing. And I have in my hand, when Michael walked into the room, a handwritten note. And this handwritten note was from a congregant. And that note was singing the accolades of this community and was very kind in assessing my efforts in this time that ministry has taken on a new look. So I'm holding this note in my hand, and here comes Michael, and we start talking about this project, and then Michael gets ready to leave. And Michael says, "Cheap thrills, baby." And I repeated it back. "Cheap thrills, baby." And in that moment, I knew that I was on the high road. I was on the high road of consciousness because I was completely present to the joy, to the love, to the connection that those two little simple things coming together in that moment brought me. And I could honestly say in that moment, we're doing the right stuff. We're taking the right steps. We have set our GPS on a higher thought. We are not bound by the limitless thinking and by the negative connotations and thinking that is floating all around us. In this community, we are taking the high road, and it's just a cheap thrill, baby. It is. What is your standard of measure for taking the high road? What is it? Could it be as simple as a kind and thoughtful thank you note from somebody that sincerely wanted me to know that they bless us and they love us and that they believe in this community? Because when we can do that at that level, when we can stay together as a community and we are holding the higher thought, we are holding the high consciousness, when we are doing that as a community, we are changing the way Flagstaff shows up in the world. And we're changing how the entire opportunity of expression gets to show up in the world. Taking the high road is not a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's our work. It's who we are. It's who we say we are when we say we are the essence of God. To take the high road, not only in our conversations, in our actions, but in our thoughts. Now, that doesn't mean that'll be the first one that comes. It doesn't mean that. And it doesn't mean that it's a fail if it's not your first thought to take the high road. But to take a breath, to take a moment where you consider, I could take the high road on this. I could take the next greater thought about this. I could be a bigger expression in this moment, in this. And when I am, what I notice is the smallest of things become magnified. And because I'm on the high road, that magnification is of the good. And then I carry that with me into the next thought that may not be one that's coming from the high road. I carry it with me. And then I get to be a better expression, even when I'm not on the high road. How do you know? The sense of connection in that moment this morning, it was almost overwhelming for me. Because, we're doing a lot of isolation here. And I'm in this space a lot, alone. And that's okay. I love connecting in this space. I love connecting with Spirit and being in this space. But the sense of connection in that moment was overwhelming. And I began to realize that this whole concept of taking the high road in my thoughts is really necessary. The knowing and sense of sacredness was palpable. How many of those high road moments do you have in your life? How many have you noticed lately? Because it is easy to get to going down that road. It's easy to get lost in the information. How many of those high road moments have you sought out in your life? And I have another question for you. Because I was thinking about this whole high road thing, and I got to tell you, having that experience and thinking about this high road thing and thinking about this message and, thinking about what's going on in the world and everything that's happening, I thought, yes, Penny, you are the one to take the high road. And in enters my high horse of self-righteousness. And I saddle her up and I think I'm going to run around the world and tell everybody how they should take the high road. How do we avoid saddling up that high horse and stepping into that self-righteousness when we are holding the awareness and the need to take the high road? How do we keep from looking down on those folks? And how are we any different than those people that we might stand in so much disagreement with if we are sitting on our high horse and we are making judgments from our self-righteous stand that my road's the right road? I'm on the high road. You just need to get in line. You need to buck up. How do we avoid that? I gotta tell you, it's tricky. It's tricky. People I see without a mask, and I think, well, they probably don't believe in science. These stories, I start running in my head. Man, I am tightening up that self-righteous saddle right then. That's exactly what I'm doing. It's none of my business. I know that we want everybody to participate and we want everybody to be part of the solution. I know that. And when I hold the thought that they are wrong, I am no different. And when I hold the thought that they are wrong, where do my thoughts go? My thoughts go right down the tube and I fall right off the high road. And right off of my self-righteous horse is what happens. That's what happens in that moment. And are my divine thoughts available to me then? Am I holding a higher thought? Can I show up as my greatest essence of God when I am on my high horse of self-righteousness? I don't think so. At least not for me. If you have mastered that, I really do want to talk to you. Because if you can stand in a place of self-righteousness and judgment and believe that you're standing on the high road, I just want to know how you've reconciled that. Because we are all one with God. We are all one with God. And we've got a big 30 days ahead of us, and maybe more. And the invitation in this is this. When you are on your high horse, aren't you further away from your groundedness? When you're on your high horse, could you possibly not be being the greatest expression of God that you have the opportunity to be?